Quick, relevant tangent for context. Growing up in a Doom household, I was raised as a FPS fan first and foremost, later branching out and playing anything that looked fun, regardless of genre. Basically played anything with the exception of sports and mobile games. But one genre that somehow eluded me that I had never played, never had any experience in was the JRPG. I almost didn't have any experience in RPGs either, unless the action games I played had watered-down RPG mechanics in them. Lots of them had light RPG systems in them, in the form of skill trees, perks, or character/gear progression. Most of the time, though, I enjoyed these systems in whatever game they were in, but I still never really pursued the JRPG genre due to reasons that I still can't really explain. So, I did my research and made the executive decision to informedly risk drop AAA full price cash on Square Enix's newest remake of a storied franchise. This was easily the best decision I could have made since now. Having completed Star Ocean 2 Second Story R Remake, I can say without a shred of a doubt this game single-gamedly turned me into a JRPG fan and potential future owner of an anime body pillow. And now that you've heard my life story, we'll get to the basics. Star Ocean Second Story blasted onto retail shelves all the way back in June 1999 and has been a fan favorite in the series ever since. Flash forward nearly 25 years later to November 2023, and developer Gemdrops then dropped what I can only describe as a perfect example of a textbook JRPG. This should also serve as an industry template for how to make a god-tier remake that pleases the OG fans while also enticing the curious new generation of JRPG players to see how amazing old games can be with just a few quality-of-life improvements. When you start the game, you get a bit of story context to bring you up to speed. The setup here is an intriguing one, and I won't spoil anything until later in the video with a generous warning. So, as the son of Commander Rodix from the first game, you find yourself controlling Claude C. Kenny during some kind of mission to explore inhabitable planets, or something to that extent probably. You, your dad, and the science class land on a mysterious planet that houses some otherworldly door tech and a tempting draw to touch things that could be alien or dangerous. So our boy Claude touches this machine and is inexplicably teleported to the fantastical planet of Expel.
977. What?
He's gone.
To keep it brief in this spoiler-free part of the video, Claude gets teleported to the planet. He heroically saves the first woman he sees from a monster, and then after that, he's accused of being the mythical warrior of light sent by the star gods to fix the evil sorcery globe that's been plaguing the land of Expel. This is a brilliant way to open the game that leaves you with tons of questions that all beg to be answered, especially for someone like me who's new to JRPGs and oblivious to all the genre tropes and systems. After the opening, you basically get sent on an overarching mission to investigate said sorcery globe, while doing tons of other quests and or missions to help achieve that main goal. As already mentioned, you get to play as interplanetary ladies man Claude, but you can also choose to play through the whole game as the woman Claude ends up saving upon his first arrival in Expel, that being Rena Lanford. Now, I can't speak to her campaign and the differences it has because I haven't played her story yet, but if it's any bit as good as Claude's, then it's automatically world-class. Together, you'll meet lots of other characters, all of differing races and backgrounds. These varied characters can play a small, large, inconsequential, or major role in your story, so I suggest talking to most of the people you run into. The other supporting and main characters in the game are fantastic, and the entire cast is likable, even the badass villains to a certain extent. Moving on to the ambitious gameplay loop, aka what you'll be doing 90% of the time. And yeah, based on what I've seen of the original, it doesn't look like they changed too much, just kind of updated everything. You still talk to people, accept quests, prepare for quests, then conquer whatever obstacles in your way. In the downtime between those bigger story missions, there is a straight plethorious amount of shit to do, and to my absolute shock, a lot of it's actually fun. You can earn points through gameplay that you can use to generously upgrade Claude's stats, turning him into the Renaissance man his dad always pressured him to be. You do this through the IC Item Creation Specialty Abilities menu section. There is an intimidating amount of freedom and customization available here. In the Item Creation tier, you can put points into cooking, writing, crafting, appraising, art, replication, just to name a few. Now, those abilities alone would make for a great in-depth system, yet they took it 2 giant steps for mankind further by giving you a specialty and super specialty tier to invest in as well. Now, the stuff listed here gets pretty specific, so if there's certain things you want to do in the game, chances are you probably can here. A few of my favorites include things like scouting, bodyguard, master chef, and the one, the only, the gloriously addicting, the fishing. This was my main non-questing activity since it's so quick, easy, and fun. There is a few hundred different kinds of fish in this game that you can discover and catch, and I got almost all of them, nearly filling the fish encyclopedia. That's no small feat. No game before this one has ever made the act of fishing fun for me personally. Yet Star Ocean 2 effortlessly had me actively seeking out the shorelines and any body of water within Claude's reach and or casting distance. Bravo and well done to the devs here for seemingly retaining all the depth of the original, which certainly would have blown my mind had I played it back on release. You thought that was a lot to process? Well, they take that envelope and push it even more by letting you put specific skill points into 30 plus skills that will in turn upgrade the IC Item Creation special abilities you have, adding yet more depth and freedom to an already great system. It was great fun pumping all of my points fully into determination, biology, herbology, item knowledge, and of course, knife. Knife skill, of course, translating beautifully into how much damage you do to the enemy during combat. And this is where I gush about the combat experience. The good news is the combat is very fun and just as equally addictive. The only downside is how weak Claude starts off as, like before gaining any of his special arts, aka the 2 to 4 special attacks he can use during combat, activated by hitting R and L1 respectively. And these special arts are the fresh bread and fatty butter of this tasty combat system / toast metaphor. Also, since I'm discussing progression, I'd hate myself even more if I neglected to mention the combat skills you can improve. By spending BP, aka battle points, you can upgrade individual combat skills. These are unrelated to upgrading the specialty skills that improve Claude as a person, and separate from upgrading the actual special arts themselves, which are the special moves that Claude mixes and matches in combat that I just talked about. So I apologize if I explained that poorly, but basically, IC, or Item Creation / Specialty, allows you to learn an ability. The special arts / spells are the big damage attacks used during combat, and the combat skill is what you upgrade when you want to improve Claude's specific qualities, such as improving Claude's chance of a backstab. Putting points into Godspeed will increase his speed in combat every time you level up, and even the basics like avoiding enemy attacks better with the sidestep skill. If Claude is out of the required MP, aka magic points, I think, needed to use a special art, he can also use his basic-ass sword swipe by mashing the circle button. Also, when the enemy glows red, if timed correctly and you press X at the right time, Claude will dodge the attack and zip behind the enemy, leaving you with the advantage and probably a free hit or two. Another thing the player can do is bring up the battle menu, which slows time completely. This is handy if you need a second to think or get your positional bearings, since later in the game there can be so many eye-candy particle effects on screen, you probably will lose track of Claude. The menu is also great though because you can use items to heal or buff team members. You can handpick spells that you want your magic users to cast. You can change party members' individual strategies if that's needed. And of course, what JRPG wouldn't be complete without the option to bitch out and flee? It's great watching Claude and the team run away. It's very encouraging. Another feature I barely see highlighted, but is definitely the devs going above and beyond here, is the ability to play as any character in your party, excluding some story-specific guests for escort missions and the like. They make it super easy. When a combat encounter begins, you can just hold R2 and then select anyone in your 4-person team, and instantly you control them and get to play around with all their moves, all their spells, and special arts. Not to mention their specific playstyle that you yourself crafted via points and upgrades, just like you did with Claude. This expands an already super in-depth amount of customizable playstyles and should be endlessly praised, in my opinion. It gives you so much replay value. But seriously, being real, I'll admit it, the combat looked like simple garbage to me at first before actually playing it and getting to know what it's like. But when you start recruiting more party members and investing points into those combat arts, it gets amazing really quick. And if you thought that was enough, you and I were happily mistaken again, my friend, because Second Story also has another mechanic, which I think is new to this version of the game, called assault formations, that allow you to hit a direction on the D-pad during combat, which will summon an ally to jump in for a few seconds, hit the enemy with a hard-hitting attack, and then dip out just as quick as they got there. Characters you can summon are either people in your party but not in the active 4-person fighting lineup, or an unlocked jewel character that you will find on your travels, or they come as rewards for minigames, finishing certain challenges, and guild missions. I love the assault formation feature. It has brief cooldowns, so you can't spam them, but they do very decent damage and can be the difference between life and death in some battle cases. Also, they just look cool as fuck, and I love seeing franchise favorites represent. But really, where's Elena, though? Unless I didn't unlock her yet. I want to see Elena, thank you. I need the anime body pillow as well. Last, and I promise you, hopefully this is the last about the combat, but I gotta mention that you can also, if you feel the need, change up your formation of your party's positioning. But I personally never did that because I felt the default line formation worked well enough, so I didn't feel the need to change it. Also, in the game's opening few hours, the combat admittedly looks relatively basic. But, as I said before, the combat in the end and even mid-game will inevitably remind you of your favorite crazy god-summoning anime battles, and it's also similar to anime in that you'll have lots of fun hearing party members call out the names of their special arts as they begin attacking the enemy. I heard Claude shout, "Victory!" countless times during my playthrough because there was a move I loved for crowd control, and yeah, I loved it. Never annoyed me once, and it put another smile on my face. Great voice acting here. Speaking of the exceptional voice acting, I am unsure if the original game was voice acted or only cutscenes were or whatever, but the way Second Story R does it, anytime the character portrait appears on screen for dialogue, the speaking character will be fully voiced when expressing important information, or it's almost always present during the story moments with in-game cutscenes. The NPCs sometimes have a voice, again, usually only when it's needed to emphasize something pretty important to the player.
Wow! I've never been to Liqueur before, but it's amazing.
Ha! You sound like some kind of country hick out on vacation.
Well, excuse me for being excited, Claude.
The English voice acting in the game was very well done, with my favorites obviously being Claude and Reyna. They sold the characters to me with their excellent performances before I even completed the demo. Really good stuff. As for the others, I gotta shout out the homies Welch, Precious, I don't know how you say it, Bowman, and the most lovably hateable 12-year-old this side of energy need. That's right, you know who I'm talking about. Leon DS, aka demoralizing shithead Guest. Leon Guest. Back on track with the relevant question, what would an old school JRPG be without dungeons? Answer, it'd be a pretty unambitious game to say the least. I mean, even as a new player of JRPGs, even I know that these games have to have or contain dungeons that pose a serious challenge to the player, usually requiring a certain party member, item or ability to help you scrape by in those particularly long dungeons with the unforgiving save points or the elementally buffed enemies that force you to employ different strategies instead of brute force or just whatever lies in your path. And to be completely transparent, I couldn't really tell you how many dungeons there are in the game because I mainly just cleared the ones that are required for progressing the story. And I did start the post-game dungeon that's said to be really hard, but yeah, I didn't get very far in it. Anyway, they were all fun and all memorable in their own way because they all kind of have their own theme. There's maze-like areas, there's enemies and traps to watch out for, there's unique puzzles sometimes, and of course, you'll find the bosses. Also, watch out for any water in the dungeons, as it may house a rare fish native only to that cave, dungeon, or area, and you never know if you'll be able to backtrack later and catch that said fish. And you're going to want to finish that fish encyclopedia. The rewards are tasty. Also tasty in the game is the music on display here. Series mainstay and industry legend Matoi Sakuraba is back again, and he revitalizes the soundtrack here. The new renditions of the classic songs are amazing. They're fun, they're memorable, they're whimsical. They all sound fantastic re-recorded, and yes, they will get stuck in your head. 10 out of 10 on the soundtrack, and for anyone who longs for the old school vibes, you can easily switch it back to the original game soundtrack in the menu. But honestly, I listened to both, and they both stand toe-to-toe. The in-game music is way better than I expected and is a shining example of a grand, larger-than-life sci-fi fantasy adventure soundtrack. Okay, normally in my videos, I don't ever put spoilers in, so this is the part where I'm giving you like a fair 10-second, maybe 5-second warning. But, plot twist, I'm not actually going to spoil the really juicy bits of the story that reveal, the whole mystery and everything. I just wanted to praise the fantastic storytelling, whether it's through cutscenes, character dialogue, or delicious bits of in-game lore. All of the writing on display is fantastic, and the whole game is a roller coaster ride. And I had a big, stupid, non-weed related grin on my face while riding it. I mean, really, Claude gained so much life experience on this adventure. Like, they should have said on the back of the box that he would do things like enter armory tournaments, he could visit amusement parks, he could go on scavenger hunts for rare herbs, which I'm sure was fun. He can blow his life savings on gambling, on the stupid bunny who never wins in the race. And last spoilery bit is I'm going to praise the main antagonists of the game, aka the 10 Wise Men. These guys are evil, and they're cartoonishly evil. It's so satisfying to beat them all in the end. Equal vibes to challenging all the gym bosses in Pokemon, if you played that like I did when you were younger. Anyway, these guys are obviously the toughest bosses in the main story, and it was super fun to get wrecked repeatedly until I found and exploited their weaknesses. I wish there was more enemies in the game like this, since they forced me to think and plan meticulously in order to win. The designs of these guys is masterful as well. You got OG Terminator bro over here with the Arnold hair and the cyborg red eye. You got
you came.
RoboCop's brother. You got aged Visor LaForge from Star Trek. You got a Final Fantasy mage, and I won't spoil anymore. I'll just say these guys are top tier villains, and I just wish we got to spend a bit more time with them because their dialogue was great. They were cartoonishly evil, like I said. They were just very interesting characters. Hopefully they make a return somehow, someday. In the interest of not wasting your time, the last few things will be brief. There's a lot of stuff happening in the game at all times, and it all contributes to a crazy sense of immersion. And helping that immersion is the fact that you're going to have to traverse the fantastic world map. In the early game, you and your crew have to walk everywhere. This is no problem. It's fun walking everywhere. The world map's great. There's lots of hidden treasure and side paths and fishing, and yeah, it's not bad. And then later in the game, you can learn a bunny call.
Come on, Bunny! Come on, Bunny! Come on, Bunny!
And I'm serious, you just call for a giant bunny and it comes there, and it's a godsend. This thing is fast as hell. Honestly, the bunny's probably the fastest thing in the game besides Claude when he equips the bunny boots, but that's a different matter. Like, this thing zips up the side of mountains better than a mountain climbing goat. It is the goat of bunnies, and it can even channel Jesus H. Christ to walk on water when the invisible walls allow it. Honestly, this thing's great. Shout out again to the bunny for also getting to hard to reach areas that Claude can't, to locate chests that Claude can't. Even sweeter is you can open the chest and receive contents of said chest without dismounting the bunny, so you don't have to get down and call another one. And so the bunny's just a huge time saver, and the accompanying song that plays while you're riding him had me straight cracking up due to its self-aware, lighthearted goofiness. I mean, take a listen. But when Claude needs to get somewhere, I mean really needs to fucking beeline it somewhere, the best form of transportation in the game is, of course, the Synard. And if I'm being honest, the whole game, I was waiting for a character to somehow make a joke about getting kicked in the Synards. Like, easiest dunk ever, but no luck. Anyway, this thing is part animal, part bird, part science experiment, and the real-world Synards in the game that do exist, I guess, are at risk of going extinct, so eventually they started making their own in labs, and the thing just flies. That's the point. Like, you can zip across the map in minutes and can reach places even the godly bunny can't, all while avoiding random encounters and providing yet another super fun mode of transportation. And believe it or not, despite how it may look, the thing controls fantastically. Okay, and no bullshit, real talk, last thing I loved and really feel somebody interested in this game should know before buying is there's a feature in the game called private actions. And in my way of explaining it, these are short interactions between Claude and another character. The point of these private actions is to strengthen your bonds with and get to know people on a more personal level and learn more about them. So basically, anytime you get to a new location in the game, you can hit the square button, which enables private action mode, where for a brief second, you see your party all going their separate ways to explore the new area. Then, if you look on the minimap, it will tell you where to find available private actions. Some of these interactions are just banter between friends, some of them require you to do something for someone, and honestly, some of them are just plain funny, and I wasn't lying. The writing is good, and this was one of those rare gold-tier mythical games that actually had the comedic chops to make me laugh, to an excessive degree, actually. So, yeah, my advice, do not in any way accidentally ignore the private actions for the first half of the game, then realize your mistake and hate yourself for missing them like I did, because these situations really give the game and the characters themselves even more character, which is so desperately lacking in so many other games and genres. And yeah, that about wraps it up. I'm going to call it there. There's a lot more I could talk about with this game, and I would happily discuss it in the comments, as I wanted to make this a shorter video because I just want to see how it works out. I was really passionate about this game. And since I trust all y'all watching so much, I'm just going to ask you one last thing. Drop your favorite JRPG in the comment, even if you didn't like the video. Just suggest me something really good to play, because I want to play the best of the best and go from there. Thanks again. Bye.
Help! Help me!
Heh, heh. Run, you insects, run.
Gotcha, bitch!
More. I want to see more pain, more suffering.
Hey bros, what's going on? This is Cotton. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because subscribing makes you feel good.
Oh yeah! I'ma make you do what it do!